The cry for help the night was quiet. The alien city lay under a dark sky, its tall towers glowing with pale blue lights. The streets were almost empty, except for a few shadows moving far away. A human walked alone. His name was Daniel. He was not a soldier now, not anymore, but his body still carried the discipline of one. His boots made a steady sound on the cracked stone road. Daniel had been traveling for weeks, crossing strange worlds and strange skies. This city was just another stop. He was tired, and all he wanted was a silent place to rest. But silence here felt heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. Then he heard it, a soft sound, not the sound of wind, not the sound of machines. It was a sob, a cry. Daniel stopped. He turned his head slowly. Out of the shadows came a small figure, running toward him. It was a young alien girl. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, her large eyes full of tears. She stumbled as she ran but did not stop. When she reached him, she grabbed his arm with trembling hands. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was broken, desperate. "Please." "Follow me home." Daniel froze. He looked down at her. She was shaking, her clothes torn, her face wet with tears. She looked no older than 13 in human years. Before he could ask anything, the girl pulled at his sleeve again. "You must come. You must see." Something inside Daniel told him to refuse. This was not his problem. He was just passing through. But another voice inside him, the voice of the soldier he once was, told him to listen. A child crying in the night was never a small matter. Daniel nodded once. "Show me." The girl's eyes widened, as if hope had returned for the first time in a long while. She turned quickly and began to run down the street. Daniel followed, his boots echoing in the silence. The city was strange at night. Windows were closed, doors locked, and no voices came from the homes. Yet Daniel felt eyes watching. From rooftops, from dark alleys, from broken corners of the street. Shadows moved, then disappeared when he looked. The girl ran faster, her breath sharp, her steps light. Daniel kept close, his hand never far from the blade at his belt. After many turns, they reached the far edge of the city. Houses there were not tall and glowing, but small, made of stone and wood, broken and dark. The girl stopped in front of one house. Its door hung loose, one side broken. The windows were shattered. She looked back at him, her eyes pleading. "Please," she whispered again. Daniel stepped forward. He pushed the broken door slowly. It gave a long creak, like a cry, from the wood itself. The smell of smoke hit him first. Old smoke mixed with dust and something bitter. Inside was silence. Too much silence. The floor was covered with shards of glass, broken furniture, and black stains. The walls had strange marks, long scratches, as if claws had torn through the stone. Daniel moved carefully, each step heavy. His eyes scanned every shadow. He had walked into many ruins in his life, but this one felt different. It was not just destroyed. It was empty in a way that made his chest tighten. The girl followed him inside. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and whispered, "They came for us. They broke everything. They took them." "Who?" Daniel asked softly. "My family." Her voice cracked like glass breaking. "They took my father. They took my mother. They took my brothers." Daniel looked at her. Her small body shook, but her eyes were full of fire. She was not only afraid, she was angry. He turned his gaze back to the broken room. Something caught his attention in the corner. A small object lay half buried under the rubble. Daniel bent down and lifted it. It was a round device, cracked but still glowing faintly with blue light. When he touched it, the device clicked and began to play. A voice came out, weak and broken. "If you find this, we tried to resist. They wanted the child. Protect her. Do not let them." The voice stopped. The device went dark. Daniel's hand tightened on the device. He felt the girl's eyes on him. You see now? She said softly. I am the only one left. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time he understood. She was not asking for comfort. She was asking for protection. She was asking for him to stand beside her. But before he could speak, he heard it. A sound outside. A step. Then another. Slow, heavy, not one person, many. The girl's face turned pale. She grabbed his arm, her fingers like ice. They followed us. Daniel stood tall, his heart steady. He slid the blade from his belt. The door behind them creaked again, not from his hand this time. From the shadows outside, someone was coming. In the night was no longer silent. The broken home. The broken door moved again. A shadow slipped across the wall, tall and thin. Daniel stood still, blade in hand, his eyes locked on the entrance. The alien girl pressed close behind him, her small hands clutching his coat. The silence broke with a low hiss. Then a figure stepped inside. It was not human. Its body was covered with dark armor that seemed grown, not built. Long claws scraped the wood as it entered. Its eyes glowed faint red, scanning the room. Behind it came two more, moving in perfect rhythm, like hunters trained for one purpose. Daniel's muscles tightened. He had fought many kinds of enemies in his life, but these moved with something colder than soldiers. They moved like predators. The first one sniffed the air. Its gaze stopped on the girl. The sound it made was almost like a laugh. Daniel stepped forward, blocking her with his body. His voice was calm but hard as steel. You'll not touch her. The creature tilted its head. Then it spoke in broken words, the voice deep and twisted. Give, child. Live, human. The offer was simple, cruel. Daniel gripped his blade tighter. He did not answer. The silence lasted one heartbeat. Then the first creature lunged. Daniel moved fast. The blade flashed. Metal met claw with a sharp crack. Sparks lit the dark room. The force drove Daniel back a step, but he held his ground. He twisted, slashing across the creature's arm. Dark liquid spilled, thick and foul. The thing howled, its scream rattling the broken walls. The others rushed forward. Run, Daniel shouted. The girl darted past the broken furniture, heading toward the back of the house. Daniel fought to keep the hunters away from her, his blade moving quick, each strike aimed to slow them down. But they were fast. Too fast. One claw cut across his shoulder. Pain burned, but Daniel gritted his teeth and pushed back. He slammed the hilt of his blade into the creature's jaw, breaking bone with a sickening crack. The girl cried from the next room. This way. Daniel leaped back, grabbed the half-broken recording device from the ground and followed. They rushed through a narrow hall into what was once a kitchen. The walls were torn apart, the floor covered with black stains. The girl pulled at a loose panel on the floor. A hidden tunnel opened beneath. In here, she whispered urgently. Daniel glanced back. The hunters were already coming. Their claws scraped the walls, leaving fresh marks. He dropped into the tunnel with the girl. The panel slammed shut above them, sealing the entrance in darkness. The air was damp and heavy. Daniel's breath was loud in the narrow space. The girl held his hand tightly as they moved forward. The tunnel stretched long, walls wet and cold. The faint sound of dripping water echoed. Behind them, claws struck the floor above. The hunters knew. They would not stop searching. Where does this lead? Daniel asked. The girl's voice was small. To the old quarter. Safe. Maybe safe. Daniel did not like the word maybe, but he said nothing. After minutes of silence, they reached another broken hatch. Daniel pushed it open carefully. Moonlight spilled in, faint and pale. They climbed out into another ruined street. Houses leaned like old bones, their windows empty, their doors broken. The air smelled of rust and ash. The girl looked around, her eyes full of pain. This was my home. All of it. Daniel saw her shoulders shake, but no tears came this time. She had cried too much already. Why do they want you? He asked quietly. The girl looked up at him, her eyes glowing faint in the night. Because of what I carry. She opened her hand. In her palm lay a small crystal, glowing softly with blue light. Daniel stared at it. The glow felt alive, pulsing with slow rhythm like a heart. "What is it?" he asked. "It belonged to my father," she said. "He said it must never fall into their hands. He said it holds the memory of our people." Daniel looked again at the ruined homes, the claw marks, the silence of an entire quarter gone. He understood now. They were not just hunters. They were erasers. They wanted to wipe out everything she was. He slipped the crystal back into her hand and closed her fingers over it. "Then we keep it safe. Together." For the first time, the girl gave a small nod of trust. But before Daniel could speak again, a sound rose behind them. The same metallic hiss, closer now. The hunters had followed. The girl's face turned pale. Daniel lifted his blade once more, standing between her and the approaching shadows. His voice was steady. "Stay behind me." The night was not finished with them. The chase. The hiss grew louder. Daniel's grip tightened on his blade. The alien girl clung to his coat, her breathing fast and shallow. From the ruined street, shadows moved. 3 hunters stepped into the pale light. Their armor glistened like wet stone, claws clicking as they walked. Their glowing red eyes locked on the girl. Daniel whispered, "Stay low." The first hunter let out a sharp cry and lunged. Daniel shoved the girl aside and swung his blade. The strike cut deep into the creature's chest, spilling dark liquid. But it did not fall. It kept coming, claws swiping like hooked blades. Daniel ducked, rolled, and struck again. The creature roared. Behind it, the others advanced. The girl pulled at his arm. "We must run, we can't fight them all." Daniel knew she was right. Even with his training, 3 hunters at once were too many. He grabbed her hand and sprinted down the broken street. The hunters gave chase. Their footsteps pounded like war drums, their claws scraping stone. The sound echoed through the dead quarter. The girl ran as fast as she could, but her legs were small. Daniel pulled her along, his breath sharp in the cold night. He looked for an escape, any escape. The street split into narrow alleys. Daniel turned left. The walls closed in around them, shadows swallowing the light. Behind, the hunters followed, never slowing. One leaped, landing on the wall like a spider. It crawled sideways with terrifying speed, claws digging into stone. Daniel cursed under his breath. He shoved the girl forward. "Go, don't stop!" They burst into an open square filled with shattered statues and broken fountains. The hunters spread out, circling them like wolves. The girl trembled, clutching the glowing crystal in her hand. "They won't stop," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his face hard. "Then we make them lose." He spotted an old tower at the edge of the square, half collapsed but still standing. Its entrance was a dark arch. Without hesitation, he pulled the girl toward it. They rushed inside. The stairs spiraled upward, crumbling under their feet. Daniel could hear the hunters entering behind them, claws scraping the stone steps. "Higher," Daniel urged. The girl's small feet stumbled, but she pushed on, determination in her eyes. The tower shook as the hunters climbed. Daniel knew they would catch up soon. His mind raced. Fighting here was suicide. He needed another way. At the top of the tower, they reached a broken window. The city stretched below, rooftops like jagged teeth. The wind howled through the cracks. The girl froze. "It's too high." Daniel looked down. A fall from here would break bones, or worse, but staying meant death. He scanned the rooftops and spotted a rope bridge connecting the tower to another building, swaying dangerously in the wind. It looked ready to snap. Daniel grabbed the girl's shoulders. "Listen, we run across fast. Don't look down, do you understand?" She nodded, though her lips trembled. The hunter's footsteps grew louder, closer. Daniel stepped onto the bridge first, testing its weight. The ropes groaned, the planks shaking under his boots. He pulled, the girl after him. The wind blew harder. The bridge swayed like a dying serpent. Halfway across, a hunter leaped onto the rope behind them. The whole bridge shuddered. The girl screamed. Daniel spun, slashing at the ropes. His blade cut deep, fibers snapping. The bridge tilted violently. The hunter roared, clawing forward. "Run!" Daniel shouted. They reached the other side and leapt onto the rooftop. Behind them, the bridge gave a final snap. The hunter fell, its scream fading into the darkness below. But there were still two more. The girl pointed to a grate on the rooftop. "There! The tunnels!" Daniel rushed to it, yanking the rusted cover free. He helped the girl climb down, then followed quickly. The tunnels were narrow and damp, smelling of mold and iron. They crawled through the dark, the sound of their breathing loud in the silence. Above, claws scraped the roof, searching. The girl whispered, "They know who you are." Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" "They said your name," she whispered again. "When they came for my family. They said, 'Find the human Daniel.'" Daniel's chest tightened. He had never been to this city before. He had no enemies here. But someone, somewhere, had marked him. He forced the thought aside. Right now, survival mattered more. They moved deeper into the tunnels until they reached a large chamber. Old machinery stood silent, covered in dust. The girl sat down, her small body shaking. Daniel kept watch at the entrance, blade ready. His shoulders still burned from the earlier strike, but he ignored the pain. The girl looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. "Why do they know your name? Why do they hunt us both?" Daniel had no answer. But in his heart, he knew this was no longer only about her. This was about him too, and the night had only just begun. Secrets in the dark, the tunnels were cold. Drops of water fell from the stone ceiling, echoing like slow, steady heartbeats. Daniel walked first, his blade ready, while the alien girl followed close behind. Her small steps splashed in shallow puddles, but she did not complain. The darkness pressed in on them. Daniel's eyes searched every shadow. He had walked through battlefields, ruins, and war zones, but these tunnels felt different. They did not feel empty. They felt alive. After a while, the girl whispered, "They are not far." Daniel nodded. He knew she was right. The hunters were still above, searching. Their claws had not touched the ground yet, but the silence was too heavy, too careful. As they moved deeper, Daniel began to hear something strange. At first it was faint, like the wind moving through cracks in the stone, but then it grew clearer. Words, whispers. He stopped. The whispers were speaking his name. Daniel. The sound crawled into his ears, soft and smooth. It felt like someone, standing just behind him, breathing against his neck. He spun, blade ready, but nothing was there. Only the girl, staring at him with wide eyes. "You heard it too?" Daniel asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, but you must not listen. My father warned me. These tunnels, they speak lies." Daniel frowned, but they kept moving. The whispers returned, louder this time. "Daniel, why do you protect her? She will betray you. She is not what you think." Daniel's grip tightened on his blade. He forced the words out of his mind, but they clung to him like spiderwebs. The girl tugged at his coat. "Please," she said softly. "You must ignore them. If you listen, they will pull you in." He looked at her. Her young face was pale but steady. He saw no lie in her eyes. Still, the whispers grew sharper. "She knows more than she tells you." "Daniel. She hides the truth. She carries death in her hands." Daniel stopped walking. The girl froze too. "What truth?" he asked. Her lips pressed together. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the crystal again. Its blue glow lit the tunnel, soft but alive. "This," she whispered. "It is not only a memory. It is a key. My family protected it for generations. The hunters want it because it can wake something old." Daniel stared at the glow. It pulsed like a living heart. "What does it wake?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "I don't know. My father never told me. Only that it must never fall into their hands." The whispers laughed around them. The sound made Daniel's skin crawl. "She lies, Daniel. She knows. She hides." Daniel turned sharply, slashing his blade into the darkness. The sound vanished like smoke. The girl flinched. Her voice shook. "Please, trust me. If I knew, I would tell you." Daniel breathed hard. His soldier's mind told him to doubt, to question, but his heart saw only a frightened child holding on to the last piece of her family. He sheathed his blade slowly. "I trust you. For now?" The girl nodded, relief softening her eyes. They continued deeper until the tunnel widened into a vast chamber. Old machines stood silent, half buried in stone. Broken pipes lined the walls, dripping water into pools below. In the center of the chamber, someone sat against the wall. Daniel froze. The figure was large, wrapped in torn armor stained with blood. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes burned, bright, an alien rebel. When he saw Daniel, he coughed, spitting dark blood. Then he spoke, his voice sharp, despite his weakness. "Human, I know you." Daniel stepped closer, blade still ready. "You know my name?" The rebel nodded slowly. "Daniel. The hunters. They were told to find you, to kill you, because you will stand in their way." Daniel's chest tightened. "Why me? I'm no one to them." The rebel gave a broken laugh. "No one? You are human, and that means everything. They fear you, though they will never say it. Your kind has always been the spark, the fire, and now you protect the last key." He turned his gaze to the girl. His voice grew heavy. "Child, your family's blood runs in you. You are the last. If you fall, they win." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she stood taller, clutching the crystal. Daniel crouched near, the rebel. "What are they planning?" The rebel coughed again, blood staining his lips. "They want to wake the sleeper, the one buried beneath the fortress. With the key, they can bring it back. A weapon, older than all of us." Daniel's heart sank. A weapon that needed an entire family to guard it. A weapon that could destroy more than just one city. The rebel's voice grew weaker. "Protect her. Protect the key, or everything ends." His head fell back. His breathing stopped. The chamber went silent again. The girl clutched Daniel's hand, fear shaking her voice. "He's right, isn't he? If they find us, it's over." Daniel stood, his blade gleaming in the faint glow. His voice was steady, calm as steel. "Then they won't find us." But even as he spoke, he knew the hunters were closing in. The whispers returned, soft and cruel. "Too late, Daniel, they are already here." The rebel's truth. The rebel's body lay still against the wall, his blood already dark on the stone. The chamber was silent again, except for the slow drip of water and the faint hum of the crystal in the girl's hand. Daniel stood over the fallen alien, his jaw tight. He had seen death before, but this one felt heavy. This rebel had carried truth in his last breath, truth that burned in Daniel's mind. The girl's eyes glistened. She bent down, touching the rebel's hand gently. "He fought for us," she whispered, "and he died for us too." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we don't waste his warning." The girl nodded, though her small face was pale. But as they turned to leave the chamber, Daniel stopped. Something felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. He raised his blade slowly. "We're not alone." From the far side of the chamber, shadows moved. A figure stepped forward, tall and strong, armored not like the hunters, but like a soldier. Its face was covered by a mask of steel. The girl gasped. "One of them," but the figure raised a hand. "Wait, I am not your enemy." The voice was deep but strangely familiar. Daniel did not lower his weapon. "You're with the hunters." The figure shook its head. "No. I was once like them, but I broke away. I fight against them now." like this rebel did. Daniel studied him carefully. His soldier's instincts screamed caution. Then prove it. Why are you here? The masked figure stepped closer. Because I heard the rebels were dying, and I heard a human was here carrying their burden. I came to see if the stories were true. The girl clutched Daniel's arm. Her voice was small, trembling. Don't trust him. My father always said, they send liars first. Daniel's eyes never left the figure. If you're with us, then tell me what you know. What are they planning? What is this sleeper? The figure paused, then slowly removed his mask. His face was scarred, his skin pale like ash. His eyes glowed faintly, but not like the hunter's. These eyes looked human, or something close. The sleeper, he said, is not just a weapon. It is alive. A machine built long before our time, hidden beneath their fortress. It was meant to be forgotten, but the hunters found its resting place. They want the key to wake it. Daniel's grip on his blade tightened. And what happens if they wake it? The man's voice was grim. Then nothing in this galaxy will be safe. Cities will fall, worlds will burn, and humans, your kind, will be the first to suffer. The girl stepped forward, her small voice cutting through the silence. Why me? Why must I carry this? The scarred man looked at her, and for the first time his voice softened. Because your bloodline guarded it. Your family swore an oath, and now you are the last of them. The girl's eyes filled with tears again, but she held them back. She stood straighter, her hand closing tight around the crystal. Daniel felt a sharp pull inside him. This child had lost everything, her family, her home, her safety. Yet the weight of the galaxy now rested on her shoulders. The scarred man stepped closer. You can't run forever. If you want to survive, you must strike first. You must go to the fortress. End this before it begins. Daniel frowned. The rebel's warning still echoed in his mind. Trust was dangerous. But his soldier's instinct also knew. Sometimes attack was the only defense. He asked coldly, "And why should I trust you?" The scarred man looked him in the eyes. Because I know the hunter's weakness. I was made like them, trained like them, and I escaped. If you want to reach the fortress alive, you need me. Daniel stayed silent, his mind raced. The girl pressed closer to him, whispering, "He will betray us. I feel it." But before Daniel could answer, the sound came again. Claws on stone. The hunters were close. The scarred man drew a weapon from his side, a long blade glowing faint, blue. "Decide later," he said. "Fight now." The hunters burst into the chamber, their red eyes blazing in the dark. Their screams filled the tunnel, sharp and cold. Daniel raised his blade. The girl hid behind the broken machines, clutching the crystal to her chest. Steel met claw. Sparks flew. The chamber shook with the clash. Daniel fought with steady strikes, every move precise. Beside him, the scarred man cut through the hunters with brutal force, his glowing blade slicing through armor like paper. The girl covered her ears against the screams, her heart pounding. Finally, the last hunter fell, its body crashing into the water. The chamber grew quiet once more. Daniel stood panting, his shoulder bleeding again. The scarred man leaned on his blade, his face grim. He looked at Daniel. "You see now. You need me." Daniel wiped the blood from his blade. He hated it, but he knew the man was right. The girl shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "No, he is dangerous. He will lead us into the trap." Daniel stood between them, his jaw hard. He looked at the girl, then at the scarred man. He knew one thing for certain. Whichever path he chose next would decide everything. The betrayal. The chamber smelled of smoke and blood. The hunters' broken bodies lay scattered across the wet floor. The girl pressed close to Daniel, her eyes still wide with fear. The scarred man stood at the far side, leaning on his glowing blade, his chest rising heavy with each breath. For a moment, the silence felt almost calm, but Daniel knew better. Calm never lasted. The scarred man spoke first. The fortress waits. If we move quickly, we can reach it before more hunters find us. The girl shook her head fiercely. No. He will betray us, I can feel it. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held firm. Daniel looked between them. His hand tightened on his own blade. He wanted to believe her, yet he could not ignore what he had seen. The scarred man had fought with them, saved them in the chamber. Without him, they might already be dead. But something in the man's glowing eyes unsettled him. Daniel said carefully, "If we walk with you, there must be no lies. Any lies and we part ways." The scarred man gave a sharp smile. "I don't lie. Not anymore." The girl whispered under her breath, "He lies every time he breathes." They left the chamber and entered another tunnel. It stretched long and dark, water dripping from broken pipes above. The girl stayed close to Daniel, but her gaze never left the scarred man. Hours seemed to pass as they moved deeper underground. At last, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. Rusted machines stood silent in the shadows, their shapes twisted like old bones. The scarred man stopped and raised his hand. "Rest here. You will need your strength." Daniel lowered himself onto a broken crate. His shoulder burned where the hunter's claw had cut him. He tore a strip from his coat and wrapped it tight. The girl sat near him, her eyes still watching the scarred man. She whispered, "He's leading us the wrong way. I know it." Daniel's jaw tightened. Maybe. Or maybe this is the only way to the fortress. Before the girl could answer, the ground shook. A sudden blast ripped through the cavern, shaking the walls. Dust rained from above. The scarred man sprang to his feet, blade glowing. But he wasn't looking at the blast. He was looking at Daniel, and he was smiling. The girl gasped. "No, it's him. He called them here." From the smoke came shapes, dozens of hunters. Their eyes blazed red, their claws dripping in the dim light. Daniel stood quickly, blade ready, his eyes locked on the scarred man. "You," the scarred man laughed. "Did you really think I broke free?" "No. I was sent to bring you here, and you followed like a loyal dog." Daniel's teeth clenched. Rage burned in his chest. The girl screamed as hunters closed in. "Daniel!" He moved fast, striking the first one that leapt toward her. His blade cut through its chest. Dark blood sprayed across the stone. The scarred man watched with cruel amusement. "Fight if you want. It won't matter. They want her alive. But you, human, they want you dead." He raised his glowing blade and rushed forward. Steel met steel. Sparks lit the cavern. Daniel blocked the strike, the force nearly breaking his arm. The scarred man pressed harder, his grin sharp as knives. "You are stubborn," the traitor hissed. "But you are only human." Daniel shoved back with all his strength, breaking the lock. He slashed across the man's chest. But the glowing armor took most of the blow. The girl cried out, clutching the crystal close. Hunters circled her, reaching with claws. Daniel moved, cutting two down in a single strike. His shoulder screamed with pain, but he would not let them take her. The scarred man attacked again, his glowing blade moving fast and brutal. Daniel barely kept pace. Every strike felt heavier, every block rattled his bones. The cavern shook as more hunters poured in. The girl screamed, "Daniel, we can't hold them." Daniel knew she was right. They were trapped, outnumbered, betrayed. But retreat was not in his blood. He fought like a storm, every strike fueled by fury. He cut down hunter after hunter, his breath sharp, his vision red. The scarred man laughed, circling him like a predator. "You can't win," the traitor taunted. "Not here. Not now." Daniel spat blood and raised his blade again. His voice was steel. "I don't need to win, I just need to keep her safe." The girl's crystal glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Light spread across her hands, wrapping her in a faint blue shield. The hunters hissed and stepped back, their claws burning when they touched it. The scarred man's grin faded. "So, the key awakens." The girl's voice rose, shaking but fierce. "You will not have it. You will not have me." The blue light flared brighter, forcing the hunters back. For the first time, the scarred man looked uncertain. Daniel saw the chance. He struck with all his strength, slashing across the traitor's arm. The glowing blade fell from his hand, clattering to the stone. The scarred man staggered, blood dripping from the wound. His eyes burned with hate. "This is not over. The fortress still waits, and there you will fall." Before Daniel could finish him, an explosion shook the cavern again. The ceiling cracked. Rocks rained down, blocking the path between them. When the dust cleared, the scarred man was gone. Daniel stood, his chest heaving, blood on his hands. The girl's blue shield flickered, then faded. She stumbled, weak, but Daniel caught her. Her small voice trembled. "You see now, I was right. He betrayed us." Daniel nodded, his face like stone. "Yes, but he also showed us the truth. We can't run anymore. We end this at the fortress." The girl clutched the crystal tighter, her eyes shining with fear and courage, and Daniel swore silently that no matter the cost, he would see her through. The heart of the fortress, rose against the horizon like a black mountain. Its towers stabbed the sky, lit by burning red lights that glowed like angry eyes. Storm clouds swirled above it, as if the world itself feared what slept inside. Daniel and the alien girl stood on a ridge, looking down at the monster of stone and steel. The wind whipped her hair across her face, but she didn't move. Her small hand tightened around the glowing crystal. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. His voice was steady, though his body was tired and wounded. "This is it. Once we step inside, there's no turning back." The girl nodded. Her voice was quiet but firm. "We end it here. For my family. For everyone." They moved down the ridge, slipping into the shadows that clung to the fortress walls. Guards marched along the ramparts. Hunters stalked the gates, their claws scratching the metal ground. But the storm above gave them cover. Daniel led her through a broken drain at the edge, crawling through wet stone until they emerged inside the fortress itself. The air was heavy, vibrating with a low hum as if the fortress itself was alive. The girl whispered, "The sleeper. It is near." They followed the sound through endless corridors. Strange machines lined the walls, glowing faintly with symbols Daniel could not read. The deeper they went, the louder the hum grew, until it filled their chests like a second heartbeat. At last, they entered a vast chamber. The floor dropped away into an endless pit, and at the center, bound by chains of glowing metal, lay the sleeper. It was huge, larger than any machine Daniel had ever seen, a figure of steel and shadow, its body shaped like both man and beast. Its eyes were closed, but its chest pulsed faintly with light, like a heart waiting to wake. The girl's breath caught. "It's real." Before Daniel could speak, a cruel voice echoed through the chamber. "Of course it is real, and soon it will rise." From the shadows stepped the scarred man. His arm was still wounded from their last fight, but his grin was sharper than ever. Around him stood hunters, dozens of them, their red eyes burning in the dark. Daniel pulled the girl behind him, blade ready. "You should have stayed buried under the rocks," the scarred man laughed. "And miss this moment?" "No, Daniel. I live for this. You brought her here. You did half my work already." He pointed at the girl. "Give me the crystal. With it, the sleeper will obey, and this galaxy will kneel." The girl shook her head, her small voice steady. "Never." The scarred man's grin twisted into rage. "Then you both die." The hunters rushed forward. Daniel met them with steel, his blade flashing, cutting through claw and armor. His body screamed with pain, but he fought like fire itself. He would not fall. Not here. The girl pressed her hands to the crystal. Its glow spread, brighter and brighter, filling the chamber with blue light. The hunters hissed, shrinking back, but the scarred man pushed through, his glowing blade cutting the air. He struck at Daniel with fury. The clash shook the floor, sparks raining around them. "You can't stop it, human," the traitor roared. "The sleeper will rise, and your kind will be the first to burn." Daniel gritted his teeth, blocking another strike. His voice was steel. Then I'll burn with it before I let you win. The girl's crystal flared, sending a wave of energy across the chamber. The chains around the sleeper trembled, glowing brighter. The giant's chest rose with a slow, heavy breath. The scarred man's eyes widened with greed. Yes, it wakes, but the girl screamed, "Daniel, help me!" Daniel broke free from the clash, rushing to her side. He placed his hands over hers, pushing his strength into the crystal. The light blazed, so bright it blinded the chamber. The sleeper stirred, its eyes opening, two vast orbs of burning white. The fortress shook as if the world itself trembled. The scarred man cried out, reaching forward. "It's mine!" But the light turned against him. The energy from the crystal struck him like fire, burning through his body. His scream echoed, long and sharp, before his form turned to ash and fell into the pit below. Daniel held the girl, tight as the sleeper rose. But instead of breaking free, the crystal's light spread across its body, sealing the chains tighter, locking the giant back into silence. The hum faded. The chamber grew still. The sleeper closed its eyes once more. The girl collapsed, weak but alive. The crystal dimmed in her hands, its glow soft now like a candle flame. Daniel caught her, steadying her small body. He looked at the silent giant one last time. Stay asleep. Together they left the chamber. The fortress shook around them, hunters fleeing into the night. By the time they reached the gates, the storm had broken. The first light of dawn touched the sky. The girl leaned against Daniel, her voice tired but hopeful. "It's over?" Daniel looked out at the rising sun. His body ached, his wounds burned, but his voice was calm. "For now. But if it wakes again, we'll be ready." The girl smiled faintly, holding the crystal close, and as they walked away, from the fortress, Daniel knew one thing with certainty. Humanity would never abandon those who asked for help. Not now. Not ever.